Okay, let's dive into something that might seem completely trivial, almost silly, but it actually unlocks some fascinating scientific mysteries.
Right.
We are talking about tickling.
That's it. Forget the playground giggle for a second. We're looking at the surprisingly complex science behind that whole involuntary reaction.
And we're digging into some great source material here, including excerpts from articles and specific research by neuroscientist Konstantina Kiltany.
Yeah, her work is central here. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to try and figure out what the latest science is telling us. Why do we tickle? How does the brain even process it?
And why studying it could reveal, well, a lot more about ourselves than you probably ever guess.
Mm-hmm.
Get ready for some connections you probably didn't see coming. I mean, the simple sensation, it touches on brain development, social bonding,
Potential insights into autism, which is fascinating.
evolution, and yeah, that age-old riddle.
Yeah.
Why can't you tickle yourself?
And what's really interesting is this isn't some new fad subject for scientists. People have been puzzling over tickling for, well, millennia.
Millennia. The source actually points out Socrates was thinking about this, like over 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. And later, Charles Darwin. He took a shot at trying to understand it, too.
Darwin. Wow.
Yet, despite that kind of historical interest, from really big thinkers, the research notes say it's still relatively under-researched.
This seems kind of wild, doesn't it, for something so common?
It really does.
So why should scientists be taking it seriously now? Dr. Kiltany argues it's a very interesting subject precisely because it sits right at this complex intersection.
Exactly. She frames it as this unique interplay, like you said, of motor, social, neurological, developmental, even evolutionary aspects, all wrapped up in one reaction.
Which means if we could just get a handle on tickling itself,
Yeah.
the thinking is it could provide a lot of insight into other topics in neuroscience.
It's like a weird little key, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. A key to unlock bigger doors in brain science.
Absolutely. And think about, say, development and social interaction. We instinctively tickle babies, right?
Yeah.
Kids.
Totally.
And the source highlights how that can actually strengthen parent-child bonds. It's a real social dole.
And by studying how the brain actually processes that ticklish feeling, the sensory information, the research suggests we might get valuable clues about how the nervous system develops in children.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting and maybe quite surprising for some people.
Right.
The source material discusses research indicating that people with autism spectrum disorder, they often perceive touch as more ticklish compared to neurotypical individuals.
Wow. More ticklish. So what could that sensitivity actually tell us?
Well, the hypothesis, the scientific thinking here, is that this heightened ticklishness might reflect some fundamental differences in how their brains are processing sensory information. And understanding that specific difference could potentially open up new ways to understand certain aspects of autism.
That's a really unexpected connection. And it's not just a human thing either, is it? The source mentioned other animals get tickled.
That's right. Apes, like bonobos and gorillas, they definitely show tickle responses. Laughter, the whole deal.
Okay, apes I can sort of picture.
But maybe more surprisingly, rats.
Rats? You're kidding?
Nope. Research shows rats respond to tickling with ultrasonic giggles, essentially.
Okay, that's quite an image. But the fact it shows up across different species, us, apes, even rats, it really makes you wonder about its evolutionary purpose, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. What possible benefit did that tickle response give our ancestors? Or these other animals? It's a really compelling evolutionary puzzle.
And speaking of puzzles, let's get to the classic one. Why can't you tickle yourself? Everyone's tried it, it doesn't work.
Ah, the ultimate tickling mystery. And what's really insightful here is what the science suggests the simple inability tells us about our own brains. It's quite profound, actually.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Okay.
How does not being able to tickle yourself tell us something?
Well, the leading idea is that your brain is constantly, distinguishing between you and the external world. Self versus other.
Right.
So when you touch yourself, your brain anticipates the sensation. It knows exactly where that touch is coming from and when, because you're the one doing it.
Because I initiated it. My brain knows the plan.
Precisely. And this anticipation, this prediction, allows your brain to basically dampen or even, as the source puts it, switch off the tickling reflex in advance.
Whoa.
It cancels the potential tickle because it saw it coming from you.
So the prediction itself is what kills the tickle. That's incredible. It means my brain is actively filtering sensations based on whether I caused them or something else did.
Exactly. It's a simple demonstration of a really sophisticated self-monitoring system that's running all the time.
Okay, that explains why I can't tickle myself.
Yeah.
But what about when someone else does? The source says scientists still don't know what exactly happens in our brain during the actual feeling of being tickled by another person.
That's the frustrating part, yeah. Despite figuring out the self-tickle thing, the actual mechanism of being tickled is still a bit of a black box.
That seems like a pretty big gap. What makes the sensation itself so hard to study?
Well, part of the challenge, as Dr. Kiltaney points out in her work, is actually defining what tickling is, scientifically speaking.
Wait, there's not a clear definition.
Not really a single agreed-upon one. The source notes there are even different kinds of tickling sensations. You've got the hard, intense, hand-tickling kind, like under the armpits.
Yeah, the kind that makes you squirm uncontrollably.
Right. And then there's the light, sort of feather-like stimulation, maybe tracing on your back, nismesis versus gargalesis technique.
Okay, yeah, those feel totally different. One's almost itchy, the other is, well, ticklish.
Exactly. And according to the source, that hard, intense kind, the gargalesis, is particularly understudied. Plus, think about it, the experience of being tickled by another person is super variable.
Yeah, different people tickle differently, different spots are sensitive.
And it's just notoriously difficult to replicate that consistently, person to person, in a controlled lab setting. How do you standardize a human tickle?
Okay, right. So you've got a sensation that's hard to even define properly, and it's basically impossible to reproduce reliably with human touch for an experiment. How do you even begin to study this rigorously?
Well, this is where Dr. Kiltaney's approach comes in, and it's pretty ingenious, actually.
Okay, tell us about it. How do you standardize tickling?
She's developed a specialized tickling lab. The source describes this setup involving a chair, right? And it has a plate with 2 holes for your feet.
Okay, feet in the holes. Got it.
And then instead of human fingers, which are inconsistent, a precisely controlled mechanical stimulator tickles the soles of the feet.
A mechanical tickler. A robot tickler.
Essentially, yeah. It takes all that human variability, the pressure, the timing, right out of the equation.
That makes sense. It ensures every single participant gets the exact same stimulation every single time. Total consistency.
Exactly. That's the key. Standardization.
So with that consistent mechanical tickle, what kind of data can they actually collect?
Okay, so now that the stimulus is controlled, they can reliably measure what's happening. They can record brain activity using things like EEG, maybe fMRI, while simultaneously measuring all the physical reactions.
Physical reaction, like what? Just the laughing?
More than that, the source mentions recording heart rate, sweat responses on the skin, breathing patterns, and yes, the vocalizations too. Laughter, but also, sometimes those involuntary squeals or screams that happen with intense tickling.
Wow. Okay, so brain activity and all the body's responses measured precisely alongside a standardized tickle. That level of detail and control. It sounds like it finally allows scientists to, well, take tickling research seriously, as the source says.
That's exactly Dr. Kiltaney's perspective. She believes incorporating this kind of rigorous, standardized method into proper experiments is crucial.
And ultimately, the goal isn't just about becoming the world's expert on mechanical foot tickling, right?
Right, exactly. That's just the tool. As she puts it, the real aim is to truly understand not just the mechanics or the sensation of tickling itself, but through that process to understand more about, well, our brains, how they process touch, social cues, self-prediction.
It's really quite remarkable. Something we usually just dismiss as a silly reflex, maybe even annoying sometimes, is turning out to be this intricate window into neurology, development, social bonding, maybe even autism, and our deep evolutionary past.
It really is. And this kind of careful work, like the research published by Kiltaney and colleagues, is building that foundation. It's starting to answer questions that have puzzled people literally for thousands of years.
So what's the big takeaway here from this deep dive?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's crystal clear that this simple everyday experience of tickling is far, far more complex and profound than it appears on the surface.
Absolutely.
It holds these surprising clues to really fundamental aspects of how our brains work, how we connect with each other, and how we process the world through our senses.
Yeah, it serves as a powerful reminder, I think, that even seemingly trivial sensations, things we barely think about, can offer this deep and fascinating window into understanding ourselves, and maybe others too, on a much deeper level.
It definitely makes you think twice about that giggle, doesn't it? The next time you, feel that uncontrollable urge to laugh from a touch, or maybe more likely, try and fail again to tickle yourself.
Right. Think about that failure. Consider what that inability is actually telling you. The very fact that your brain actively works to cancel out that potential sensation when you are the source, it highlights its incredible, constant, moment-by-moment job of building a sense of self and predicting the outcomes of your own actions, distinguishing your internal world from everything external. It's such a foundational brain mechanism, and you see it demonstrated by a simple tickle or lack thereof.